Today, the sun came out in Adelaide and warmed the heart and stirred the soul on the sort of late spring day that made you glad to be alive. But what's the date? Friday the 13th.
I've always marked Friday the 13th every year.
I don't care. Really. No, I'm not superstitious at all.
This Friday the 13th, the first day of the Australian Grand Prix, does it make any difference to you?
Well, it didn't until you told me that now, but perhaps it will.
On the unluckiest day on the calendar, on a day when most of us wouldn't dare walk under a ladder, let alone climb into a Formula One racing machine, out they came in Grand Prix City for the most dangerous challenge their sport has to offer. The very first qualifying session for the 1987 Australian Formula One Grand Prix, when men will push their cars to the brink as they battle for that coveted pole position on the grid. It's on again. Welcome to Adelaide, and buckle in. Yes, you better buckle in indeed at this, the third Australian Formula One Grand Prix, coming to you from Adelaide. And with us, as usual, the former three-times world champ, Jackie Stewart. Jackie, good to see you again.
Nice to be back again, Gibbo.
Even on Black Friday, Jackie?
Well, superstition is something, obviously, in any dangerous sport that one has to look out for. Some drivers that I've known in the past are superstitious. John Surtees was said never to get into a race car other than on the left-hand side. And one driver went all the way to Argentina, and when he got to his garage in the morning to get his race car, he found a cat in the seat, got onto a plane and flew straight home. Wouldn't do the race.
All right, Ian Chappell is with a man who also raced with certain superstitions.
Yes, Michael, the second of our world champion drivers, Alan Jones, used to don the red underpants for driving. Have you got him on for the commentary, mate?
No, Ian, I didn't think it was going to be that dangerous, but on second thoughts, perhaps I should have worn them.
And what about your thoughts on this Australian Grand Prix for 87?
Well, I think, as usual, I'm proud to say that it's going like clockwork, and the organisation seems to be second to none. And so far, it's a raging success.
And what about you? Would you rather be driving than commentating?
Absolutely, 100%. It's too hard.
OK, that's Alan Jones' thoughts on the 87 Grand Prix. Back to you, Michael.
Thanks, Ian, and we'll be back with you when these Formula One giants hit the track here in Adelaide for the first time in 1987 in just a moment. That car you're looking at right now, number 16, is the March, driven by Ivan Capelli, and that was the very first car out onto the track here in Adelaide for the 1987 Australian Formula One Grand Prix. That was this morning at the first of the untimed practice sessions, where your commentators are Murray Walker and Jackie Stewart.
This is where the Australian Grand Prix meeting of 1987 starts. This is the beginning of the first 1.5-hour practice session, and although the cars are timed to the nearest thousandth of a second, those times do not count for qualifying positions on the starting grid for Sunday. But nevertheless, this is the first opportunity that the drivers have had this year to remind themselves about which way the unaltered circuit goes, and it's going to be the first time that we see Riccardo Patrese in the place of Nigel Mansell in car number 5, the Williams car, and here it is coming towards us now with the red 5. So, Jackie Stewart, a challenging and interesting time for all the drivers.
Yes, and this, of course, is the opportunity for the drivers to learn the track right at the very beginning. The track is fresh, although there was some racing taking place on Thursday afternoon for touring cars, Formula Ford and Formula 2. The Grand Prix cars will really create a groove on this racetrack now, and the drivers will reacquaint themselves with this racetrack, which is 3.778 kilometres around, or 2.348 miles. And it's a chance for the drivers again. Some of them, of course, have never raced on this track before, such as Modena is going to find his way around here. This will be a new experience for him to drive a Formula One car really for the first time in anger, and also, of course, to find this new racetrack.
Well, there is Piquet on the track, but down in the pits are Darrell Eastlake and Alan Jones.
Well, Alan, already a lot of activity here in the pits. Elaine Prost is in already. Why come in so quickly?
Well, Darryl, the cars have all been checked over, totally rebuilt, brand new engines and gearboxes since the last race. They're sent out to do one exploratory lap, make sure there's no leaks. They take the body off, check all the suspension, just generally give the car a quick visual check over to make sure it's perfectly all right. Then they put the bodywork back on, signal the driver to go back out. Now he'll go out and stay out for 4 or 5 laps.
There is Stefano Modena feeling his way into Grand Prix style racing. This ex-125cc kart world champion.
The man in our picture now in the red and white car, of course, is the reigning and still reigning world champion Alain Prost, who is now the fastest man around this racetrack. Brought the time down to 1 minute 23, and there he is, a profile of the man who now lives in Switzerland. Of course, he is from France. Was a very successful soccer player before he became a racing driver. Debuted in 1980, of course, in the Argentinian Grand Prix. Always a hot race to start with. Completed 121 Grand Prix, and of course has won 28 as one of the McLaren cars. It could be Alain Prost,
yeah.
Has spun, and there is one for his dignity. He has spun before here. In fact, he had quite a few spins last year in practice, although he got himself together. He's had a straight-on job, and that's under braking. The great escape roads that have been built in here in Adelaide to accommodate this kind of incident.
Jackie, I think we can now share with the whole of Australia a little secret that you and I have had, and that is that Williams, at the special request of Nelson Piquet in his last Grand Prix with the team, have flown out from Britain all the vital parts necessary to turn the Williams from what is called a passive suspension car into an active suspension car. Alain Prost is now fastest. 1 minute 21.46, and Prost and McLaren are, if anything, in qualifying, famous for the fact that they do not get pole position because they have a very mature outlook towards practice. Their attitude is practice is for getting the car set up properly for the race and now that is Modena. And you remember what Jackie and I were saying about the young Italian. He is not only in a Grand Prix car for the first time, he's just stopped back there and he'll get it going again, no doubt. And car number 8 in the background is Modena's teammate, Andrea De Cesaris. But Modena is not only in a Grand Prix car for the first time, he is competing in practice, obviously, in a Grand Prix for the first time, and he had before today never even been in a Grand Prix environment and seen practice. But this young Italian is, after 11 laps in a Grand Prix car, 22nd on the grid out of 26.
Right over here behind me is the Ferrari pit, and it's a pretty sophisticated electronic gear. Alan, some of this gear that they use for timing cars is quite amazing.
Oh, it's very sophisticated now, Darryl. Not only every time the car goes past the pit, it instantly flashes what time it's done to the team. They can relate that to the driver immediately. But they also have speed traps, which tells them exactly how fast the car is going past that point.
The lap record here, Nelson Piquet, 1 minute 20.79. So it means to say that Senna, after 18 laps in a non-qualifying session, has beaten the lap record, but you would expect him to do that if it's going to happen at all, because things are quicker in a practice session. They don't have a full fuel load on. But nevertheless, I'm pretty confident that this afternoon the pole position of Nigel Mansell, 1 minute 18.4 last year, is going to be beaten. And that is Alex Caffey's car, the Ocella, which I'm sorry to say is famed for its unreliability, and here's what's happened.
It's a turbocharger that's blown. The car came along, suddenly the turbo blew, the white smoke came out, the turbo spills its oil on its red-hot turbocharger and usually catches fire. The fire marshals, and he knows immediately, so clever young man that he is, he immediately gets out, and the fire is now really caught, and it's not, in fact, being put out too well. Where are these fire marshals? There doesn't seem to be anybody on hand on that side of the racetrack.
It's not being put out at all.
I would have to say a slight oversight by the fire marshals. We normally get them on the site very quickly. There wasn't anybody on that side of the racetrack able to get to the car, and in fact a black flag and a red flag has been put out by the starter, meaning that practice has been stopped. The fire has been extinguished, but I would have to observe that it took a little longer than it should have done, and that of course could have caused trouble. Keep in mind that the driver is out of the car. There is no risk of injury to him, but nevertheless very expensive engineering and machinery has probably been quite badly damaged by the flames licking around it as long as they did.
So what were the positions when racing stopped, or rather when practicing stopped? Very interesting indeed, because Ayrton Senna, as I said, had gone round faster than the lap record. The lap record is 1 minute 20.79, Nigel Mansell. So Senna 0.2 of a second faster, and he has only done 19 laps.
Well, by golly, we saw the Acela catch fire there a few minutes ago. This is what is left of the Acela as we stand in pit lane. Jackie Stewart, you're a bit critical of the fire marshals.
Yes, it did appear that there were a comedy of errors in a way. I think the first error was made by the driver. He actually didn't drive the car to a fire marshal's post, which he could have done. A more experienced driver would have done that. Secondly, he didn't stay with his car, he didn't switch off the electrics, and he didn't hit the fire extinguisher. However, from the organisational point of view, I have to say that there was no fire marshal's point on that side of the racetrack. It, of course, is said that it's on a straight, maybe there doesn't need to be one, but today proved that there had to be one there. And in fact, like all good things in Adelaide, action has since been taken, Mike, and they've now got a fire marshal's post on that side of the racetrack to look after a fire of this kind. But it was a long time before they got the fire out, and of course it could have had serious consequences. An awful lot of work for these mechanics, perhaps unnecessarily.
Okay, well, you talk of action, Jackie, and action has resumed in this, the first of this morning's untimed practice sessions. After that break, let's go back to it.
As practice is about to restart, and the much feared René Arnoux that you can see coming out in the Ligier will be the first on the track. I say the much feared because René Arnoux has been accused of having tunnel vision and a proclivity for driving into people. Well, he's all right at the moment. He's got a clear track in front of him as he's followed by Theo Fabi and Ivan Capelli. René Arnoux, ex-Ferrari man. Before that, he drove for Renault, and he started his Grand Prix career driving for John Surtees, actually, in the Surtees Grand Prix car. And Sunday will be his 126th Grand Prix, of which he's won 7. There is the Acela, car number 21, the spare car. It has a V8 Alfa Romeo engine in it, and because of the budget limitations of Acela, they really have to race on a shoestring. And that's what's left of the Acela which caught fire. It's probably not nearly as bad as it looks, because when they get it cleaned up, it'll be a lot better, but they will undoubtedly have to replace a lot of parts. Now, Nelson Piquet starting a lap. Let's go round with him. Through the kink, the S's, which he approaches in 6th gear, takes in 3rd, exits at 120 miles an hour as he accelerates up towards the right-handed Wakefield turn, 2nd gear, 70 miles an hour, up Flinders Street, to the left-hander at East Terrace Bend, still 2nd gear, up into 3rd momentarily, back into 2nd for Flinders, the right-hander, up into 3rd gear, 120 miles an hour, up towards the Market turn. Now down to Stag turn, second gear, 70 miles an hour, up into third, to fourth, to fifth, Rundle Road, round Brewery Bend, about 110 miles an hour or more, accelerating away, down to Ketterville Terrace, down as Brabham Street, over Bartels Road, sixth gear, 220 miles an hour, as he brakes for racetrack hairpin, first gear, second gear, third, paddock turn, the left-hander, the long sweeping left-hander, building up speed, up into fifth gear, well over 140 miles an hour as he comes down to Foster's hairpin, first gear, 75 miles an hour, completing the lap and accelerating away. He was sixth fastest, 1 minute 21.863, and he is now fourth fastest because the lap that you have just seen was done in 1 minute 21.161 seconds. So it is still Prost fastest, Berger second, Alboreto third, Senna fourth, Piquet in fifth position, Farby sixth. Eddie Cheever is going superbly in that Arrows. But it looks to me now as though Berger, who is second fastest, 7/10 of a second slower than the Lotus, is going for it. That's Alio, who's spun again.
Alio's having quite a few little excursions. I tell you, every time you go off that racetrack, you can hit something, and it's just not a good idea to do it too often. Yes, Berger's in a fast one. We'll just watch this, because I think you can see Gerhard Berger trying to get a little bit ahead. He is second fastest at the present time. He could easily wrestle the fastest time from Alain Prost as he comes on to the start-finishing line. We'll have a look and see what time he has achieved. He's posted a 1:20.041 in his previous attempt. It looks like he hasn't gone fast enough to beat that, but he's still on a fast lap. He's still standing on it, so I think we can see something of Berger. Not using all the road in the entrance, not using all the road in the exit. That's a good thing. You don't want to use every inch. If you get hooked up on a curb, the same thing can happen to Berger as happened to Nigel Mansell in Japan. The curb can flick you out of line, and who knows where you can go.
It's Piquet. Piquet looks to me as though he had a bit of a wobbly there. Doesn't seem to have touched the car.
He is proceeding with caution, however. He may have just had a little kiss of the wall, just a little lip-to-lip job, but whether it's done any damage or not, he might not want to risk anything, and if he's driving back this carefully, he could be concerned that the rear wheel alignment might be out, or that the rear wheel has been damaged itself.
Nelson Piquet has had a little bit of an off. We've had a look at the car, Alan. It's not like him to have a lose, but there wasn't a lot of damage.
No, it's very minor. He's just scraped the wall and I think probably bent a steering arm. They're just checking now to see if any of the wishbones are bent. I'll probably do a crack test on them before he goes out again, if he uses that car for the next session. In the meantime, they've put him in the spare car, so I don't think there's any real problems.
And Prost has spun. Around the circuit, Alain Prost has gone off at the end of the De Ketterville Terrace straight, a racetrack hairpin. And there's a spinner. It looked like Martin Brundle in the Zakspeed facing the wrong way. Indeed it was.
Martin's now trying to find a way around. If he's not careful, he's going to anchor that car to the curb, because the cars are so low. He's done it. It's exactly what I prescribed, because the car has now lifted itself off the road a little bit. The wheels are spinning and the car is rocking back and forward, and that's one of the embarrassments that one can do in a racing car nowadays. Now we look at our on-car camera, being driven, of course, by Nakajima, the Japanese driver, in the Lotus car with the Honda engine. Final corner in this 12-corner lap around this racetrack. Reaching the rev limiter there, the little bobble you had in the engine was the rev limiter coming in so that the driver cannot physically over-rev the engine, but my God, he can over-rev the curbs. He's certainly up and over there. He was like Nehemiah going over the hurdles.
Yes, Nakajima really giving it some stick.
I wonder if everybody's told him about curbs here.
Well, some people say, have they told him about curbs anywhere? Because we won't forget that tremendously spectacular shot where he drove straight into the back of Derek Warwick's Arrows and neatly removed the whole of the right-hand wheel in the front and suspension and went on 3 wheels for a while, and shamefacedly admitted afterwards it was my mistake. It's 1 minute 28, 55, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1 minute 29. We are now in the last minute of this non-qualifying 1.5 hour practice session, and you look at the man who is 5th quickest, Nelson Piquet.
However,
and
look at this.
Berger is fastest. In the closing seconds, Gerhard Berger, and look at that, 1 minute 18.351, and that is faster than Nigel Mansell's pole position of 1986, and this is only the first session of practice. Gerhard Berger fastest. The man you look at, Alain Prost, second fastest. Michele Alboreto in the second Ferrari is third. Ferrari are right on top here at Adelaide. Senna is 4th, Piquet is 5th, Warwick is 6th, Patrese is 7th, Farby is 8th, Chiva is 9th, Johansson is 10th, and there is a lot more yet to come. Qualifying session, and the first man out onto the track is Derek Warwick in the Arrows, closely followed by his teammate Eddie Chiva, who passes him. There's Nelson Piquet in the Williams. Now, for the first time this year, we have a situation where in the first non-qualifying session, last year's pole position time has been exceeded. And that is an incredible situation. It means to say that they will be going even quicker in this hour's practice. There is always a problem on the Friday, and that is that it might on the Saturday be wet. There's no sign of it this year, thank heavens, but it means to say that in the first qualifying practice, the drivers obviously have to go as quickly as they possibly can. And here is the man who was fastest this morning for a long time, Alain Prost, the world champion of 1986 and 85. Second fastest this morning to Gerhard Berger, the young Austrian in the Ferrari.
I think we're going to see certainly times within the 1 minute 17 second bracket. That's to say, if everyone keeps the racetrack clean, in other words, nobody drops a bunch of oil on the racetrack. Berger is still warming his tyres up as Alain Prost shoots through in a slightly faster lap. Prost, incidentally, is now second fastest with a time of 1:26 seconds. But Berger is surely expected to beat the 18-second barrier. I think Prost will also do the same. And in fact, I think Berger is going to set a new pace here altogether. Well, Gerhard Berger's already on quite a fast lap as I look at him, almost coming now to the final corner of this lap. He's still, as we can see on our screen, up to the 16-second mark. He's 17, 18, 19, and there is a time already posted by him of 19.914, which puts him now in pole position. So the man who set the pace today is now in pole position and is the first driver officially in qualifying for this year's Foster Australian Grand Prix to be under the 1 minute 20-second lap.
Michele Alboreto looking at the television monitor and knowing now that Alain Prost is fastest, because now we've got a second man fastest. It was, first of all, Gerhard Berger, and it is now Alain Prost. 1 minute 18.6 compared with Gerhard Berger's 1:19.9. And that 1 minute 18.6 is 3/10 of a second slower than Gerhard Berger's non-qualifying time this morning. It is Alain Prost fastest, Berger second, Piquet in third position, Chiva fourth place, Warwick fifth, Johansson sixth.
And somebody's put up some smoke there, whether it's a barbecue or whether it's a car. In fact, it's one of the Williams.
Patrese. Riccardo Patrese has spun off, trying to find the limits of the Williams. He has succeeded.
And Prost is on a fast lap. I think we can expect to see a good lap coming out of Prost here. He seemed to be getting onto it very early in the corners. He was using a little bit of extra road, although he doesn't seem to be giving it a lot of squirt here, and he may well be held up by the slower car now, but he seemed to be on quite a fast time. So let's see what Alain Prost's got for them this time.
And he's coming up behind Alex Caffey in the Osella, who's a good-mannered young Italian, and he moves over and allows Prost through. And Alain Prost is coming up now to cross the line and start his lap. Whilst he does so, Nelson Piquet has moved into pole position. We have a third pole position holder today, Piquet, 1 minute 18 seconds, .017, which is 6/10 of a second faster than Alain Prost and 4/10 of a second faster than Nigel Mansell's last year pole position. Piquet fastest at the moment, faster than last year's pole position. Prost second, Berger third. Alboreto fourth, and the two Ferraris up in the top 4 places, and Darrell Eastlake is in the pits.
Thank you, Murray. Well, there's no fuss and panic down here in the PK pit at the moment. There's swarms of mechanics over the car. PK sitting very calmly, but the engine covers are off, Alan Jones.
Yes, Darrell, what he'll be doing now is looking at that TV monitor that we looked at earlier. He'll be keeping an eye on the competitors, seeing what they're doing, making any little adjustments to the car that he's learnt from the previous run, and just generally sitting it out. Maybe he'll make a choice to go onto new tyres to grab a little extra time, maybe wait for a little less traffic on the track. All these things will be going through his mind, and when he's ready, he'll go back out and go for it again.
20 minutes into the practice period, 40 minutes to go, and Ayrton Senna that you are looking at is in 7th position, which won't do at all for him. This is his last race meeting in the Lotus with the Honda engine. Next year he will be competing for McLaren, and he, like several others in this race, will want to go out on a high note on their last appearance for somebody or something. Ayrton Senna has already won 2 Grand Prix this year. He won at Monaco, he won at Detroit. They were both street circuits, and so is this.
And he was able to run both of those races without coming in for a tyre change. He's very smooth on his tyres. He uses active suspension, and that active suspension seems to keep the profile of the tyre more evenly on the road, so he gets less high spots of temperature and less wear for that reason. So Ayrton Senna on street courses this year has a very good record of keeping the tyres cool, and sometimes it's the man who comes in the fewest time for tyre changes that wins. So it's a tortoise and a hare philosophy that Senna has been using this season. He has not felt that his Lotus with the Honda engine is competitive enough to race against the other Hondas of the Williams team.
And for those of you who are saying, what is this active suspension he's talking about, here is the answer. Instead of the conventional springs that a normal car suspension has, this Lotus that you are looking at has got a hydraulic system which is pressurized at 3,000 pounds per square inch. There is a computer on board, and the moment the wheel hits a bump, the pressurized system reasserts itself. The result is that the car's ride height is kept more constant, and the result of that is that the aerodynamics are better, the tyres grip the road better, and if the tyres grip the road better, you can go faster.
Well, Ayrton Senna is not going fast enough right now, and the answer is we hear from Nigel Roebuck, who is a well-known British journalist for Autosport, who's linked in to the radio frequency that the Lotus team are using. The Senna is reporting back to Peter Warr, his crew chief, that he is lacking grip and adhesion. He says that the car is slipping around too much, that he can't get the speed he needs, and I noticed twice and braking at the hairpin, we had a puff of blue smoke coming from his front tyres, meaning that the tyres were locking up. So he's not getting a satisfactory ride.
Isn't modern technology marvellous? Ayrton Senna can report to Peter Warr. We know what's happening. If any of you have a message for Ayrton Senna out on the circuit, let us know. On the track, Nelson Piquet, as you look at Thierry Boutsen, is back on the track on his second set of tyres, and no doubt going for that pole position.
Alain Prost is on a quick one. If he has a clear track right now and not held up by any traffic, I think we could see another good time being put up by Alain Prost. He's now completed about 45 seconds of this lap, which we expect to be in the 1 minute 18 bracket, and who knows, he might break that and get into the 17th. but he's on the quick one, believe me.
And front row of the grid would do Alain Prost very nicely indeed. Because not only have you got a clear track in front of you if you are on the front grid, but it means to say that you are not going to have any bad starters around you. And if you get away sharply yourself, but he's not there anymore, because Alain Prost has lost his second fastest time at the moment to Gerhard Berger. The Austrian in the Ferrari is up into second place, and you can see that he's half a second slower than Piquet. That doesn't sound much, I know, but it's light years in qualifying time terms. Piquet fastest, the Ferrari of Berger second. Down to third goes Prost. Alboretto's Ferrari is fourth. Boutsen is still fifth in the Benetton. His teammate Fabi is sixth fastest, ahead of De Cesaris seventh. Riccardo Patrese, who has just gone onto the track, and there he is in the background, is eighth fastest. Ayrton Senna, normally so quick, is only ninth at the moment on a circuit where we expected the Lotus active suspension to be beneficial. We have yellow flags at Stag Corner. That means to say there's some problem. And, oh, look at Berger losing it there. Well, that hasn't dismayed the Austrian one iota. He just gathered himself up, got the car in line, but he's now slowing down. He's lost his rhythm, I think.
Well, that was a severe shock he gave his little motor car there, coming off of that curve. That's no fun for anything. You've got to be very careful. He's going very wide here. Look at that, riding the curve there, and bang, down it comes. And he gave his front end a bit of a tweak also. That would affect tire temperatures potentially. He's now looking in his mirror there, and he's certainly reduced speed. He may well come into the pits this time, and we have Patrese having spun again.
Yeah, Ricciardo's certainly going for it and not succeeding. But Berger, in spite of that bump and going offline, was faster on that lap than he had been before. But he's still second. Half a second, roughly, behind Nelson Piquet. Piquet 1 minute 18.017, which is 4/10 of a second faster than Mansell's pole position last time. Then Gerhard Berger is second on the grid, a whisker slower than Mansell was in pole position last year. Prost is third, Alboretto is fourth, Boutsen is fifth, Fabi is sixth. And off goes Patrese. There he is, spinning his car back onto the circuit.
Well, that was quite an adventure, and there's Alain Prost has also spun out. My goodness, are the flag marshals exercising their muscles today? You can see the yellow flag being waved there by the ever-efficient flag marshals here in Adelaide, and he's stalled his engine. He has stalled his engine. Now, it's quite difficult to restart a hot turbocharged engine. There's what the yellow flag says, danger ahead, drivers should slow down. If there's a real danger, they will throw 2 yellow flags. And look at that marshal giving it his all there. Now they'll have to push that car. Oh, he's got the engine restarted. Yeah, very understandably, the marshals did not want to get behind the car and create the possibility of a marshal sandwich between the McLaren and something else. But Prost gets away. The tyres look okay. He hasn't picked up any grit. He's just lost a bit of pride, but that won't worry him too much. Well, he may have a little bit in reserve on pride, don't you think? I think so. He certainly has every right to. Alain Prost, 32 years old, double world champion, and reckoned by most people these days to be the fastest, smoothest, most competent, well-balanced Grand Prix driver in the world, bar none.
Not just here in the pits with the mechanics changing tyres that all happens in Formula One. Just across on the other side of the pit road here, Alan, there's some very sophisticated electronic gear.
That's right, Darryl. They've got all the sophisticated gear they need to know exactly what's going on second by second, even to the extent where they have an electronic beam that goes across the other side of the track, and that tells them how fast their car and all the other cars are going at that point. And in fact, they've got those beams right around the circuit, and at the end of practice they can have a debrief and they can decide, you know, where they're losing out, why they're losing out, how come they're 1 or 2 miles an hour slower at that point than the other cars, or quicker as the case may be. And the apparatus that they've got there keeps them very much up to date, second by second, of what's going on.
Well, that's the Ferrari bit and some of the sophisticated gear they've got, not only to look after their own drivers, but everybody else too.
When I tell you that the McLaren annual budget is 50 million Australian dollars, you will understand where some of that money goes to when you see the electronic equipment that Darrell Eastlake was just talking about. Did you notice as Gerhard Berger came towards us there, no, as Alboreto came towards us there, that the right-hand side of his front wing is dragging along the ground? There we are, you see. That is to maximise, to help maximise the downforce. The lower you can get the car down to the ground, the better the adhesion will be, and that is why the active suspension system that is used by Lotus and on Nelson Piquet's Williams here today is potentially superior. There is Christian Danner, the tall German driver in the Zach Speed, who, like so many this afternoon, in finding his limit on this slippery track, has overdone it, has spun off. The marshals gingerly edging him back, whilst in the background you can see those yellow flags furiously waving as Philippe Streff goes through in the Tyrrell. Oh, Christian can sit there and nonchalantly wave them back. He's all right. He's in a carbon fibre tub. There is Jonathan Palmer going through, and now with about 24 minutes to go in this session, it's still Piquet, Berger, Prost, Alboreto fourth, Boutsen fifth, and Farby sixth.
And Nelson Piquet, I think, has gone out in his second set of qualifying tyres. So I think we could see fireworks yet again from Nelson Piquet. If the man is going to break the 18-second barrier, I think we might just see it coming up. Now, in the meantime, Alboreto, the car that you're looking at right now, may well be in a hot one. Let's see how he's going. Michele Alboreto at the moment is fourth fastest, and he's trying to unseat Alain Prost, who's done quite a quick one at 18.490.
He's got Ivan Capelli in front of him in the 3.5-litre car.
In fact, he's got quite a lot of traffic there, so I think this will not be the fastest lap put in by Alboreto today. Unless everything is good for you, there's no point in overheating your tyres and giving yourself a hard time. Breathe easily, get your resources back up, get yourself up to pitch, and then pull off a quick one.
Had a very disappointing Japanese Grand Prix, because when Nigel Mansell crashed out in practice in Japan and destroyed his own chances of becoming world champion, Nelson Piquet automatically became the world champion of 1987 because no one else could approach his points level, and naturally he wanted to demonstrate his superiority, prove his superiority by winning or at least doing well in Japan, but it was not to be. And off Nakajima, Satoru, and that shows you how incredible drivers' reflexes are, because he hardly paused as he fed in the clutch again, with his momentum keeping him going over the loose surface, and rejoined the track.
And he also kept the engine running. The old saying, when in doubt, both feet out, but right now...
And Roberto Moreno's both feet are out because he is on the loose stuff and he can't get going. Now, the question now is, are they going to stop practice? Because if anybody goes off there, they'll go straight into Moreno's AGS.
Well, it's a question of, here we're going to see a replay of it. He gets it loose, it loses the back end very easily. It's the first turn, really. He just hits those tyres and gets it into the soft stuff.
And you can see the questioning all over Roberto Moreno's face, or his head rather. But it's disappointment for the Brazilian, because the instruction is to get the AGS off the track. Oh, and off goes one of the Brabhams now. It looks, yes, it's De Cesaris. Well, it wouldn't be a practice session if Andrea de Cesaris hadn't gone off somewhere, so he's keeping up his record.
Well, the Crasher has been well named over the years. When he was with McLaren at one time, I think he was responsible for 18 chassis in 1 year. It'll be interesting to see if damage has been done and to what extent, but they will have a spare car for him. So if he has fast feet... Oh, and there's
goes Alio again. I was just about to say that there is some real needle there, because that was Philippe Alliot, the old boy in the Lola team, leading Yannick Dalmas, the new man. And if there is one man you... Oh, dear me, Alliot is really fired up. If there's one man you want to beat, it's the man who is in your own team, because he is the only man who has got a car the same as yours. And I could see it written all over Alliot that he was saying, I will put this young whippersnapper in his place, keep him behind me. And equally, you could see that Dalmas was saying, I'll get past the old boy. Well, Dalmas did it, and Alliot did not keep him behind, and here's why.
Oops-a-daisy, he lost it very early in the corner. The back end got out, he just got out of line there, and he again was very fortunate to find himself being able to restart in the gravel surface. So Philippe Alliot rejoins the track. There will be many spins. He even does a pirouette for us. How sweet.
Nelson Piquet, fastest on the circuit, 1:18.017 after 23 laps. This is Gerhard Berger's 15th lap, and he's going for it.
And incidentally, while we look over the shoulder of Gerhard Berger, Alain Prost has just joined the circuit, but also with a new set of qualifying tyres, so we could expect to see something from him.
10 minutes to go. Remember what I said about the fastest time very often being done in the closing minutes of the session, and that is Jonathan Palmer in the 3.5 litre Tyrrell, who has been annihilated by Gerhard Berger.
Well, with around about 350 horsepower to spare, Berger could easily expect to pass Jonathan Palmer on the straight, although if he had caught him earlier, he would have had a better time.
Look at the target. 1:18. This is going to be it, I think. Yes! What an amazing lap! 1:17.267. Compared with Mansell's pole position time last year, that's a second faster. Gerhard Berger, for the third time this year, is in a pole position.
Young Modina's got himself up to 15th fastest, as Nelson Piquet, as we look from our commentary position, is awaiting to get out onto the track. There is Nelson Piquet joining the track. We may be seeing an attempt by him in the closing minutes of this hour of Friday's qualifying.
There he is. It's not just a matter of pride to try to take the pole position, because if you are in pole position, you are slightly ahead on the grid of the man who is second, because there is a staggered formation in order to increase safety at that most critical time in a Grand Prix, the start. And it also means that you have the cleanest run into the first corner. Here at Adelaide, the pole position will be on the left-hand side of the grid, which would give the pole position man the best run up to the left-hander, and then the right, which follows it. And very often, it is pole position which wins the race. So Piquet now has got a very considerable challenge, because his fastest lap at 1:18.017 is 0.8 of a second slower than that absolutely incredible lap of Gerhard Berger's in the Ferrari. And how nice it is to be talking about Ferrari at the front again.
I must say, looking at Nelson Piquet in a race car makes me feel good. He looks part of that race car, and that's very important. There you see Michele Alboreto and his Ferrari out on the track now. He's attempting to put a quick lap in. Terry Boutsen has put in a slightly faster time. He's still 5th fastest, but he's got a slight edge on the time that he achieved before. But but it is in fact Alboreto who's in 4th position, just ahead of Boutsen, and he'll be looking for a quick one. His car should be capable of doing the same kind of speed as Berger has achieved. I made the point at the beginning of this telecast that Berger uses left foot braking, which may give him a slight advantage round this street course, and that may just be the difference.
Alboreto over the line with some 850 horses blasting away behind him, putting the power down through those big boots, the Goodyear tyres on his rear wheels, but Alboreto has slowed right down. You can see again that he's decided to give it best on this lap. He's 4th fastest from his previous lap, 1:18.578 behind Prost, Piquet and Berger. So in the top 4 places we still have 2 Ferraris, a Williams and a McLaren.
Alboreto was obviously scratching to achieve that 18.578, and he gave up and is on a cold lap now. It could be that you'll see another lap coming out of him in just in a few short minutes. Nelson Piquet in the meantime will be held up here, but fortunately it's on the final corner, so hopefully he can get past now. There he goes, slips through Dalmas, got a clear lap now. Now this could be a quick run from Nelson.
News from Darrell Eastlake in the pits.
You had a great duel between you and Nelson Piquet, you being the victor.
My car is quite good here, so was not that difficult. I had a little bit of traffic, but we can fix some small problems for tomorrow, so anyway tomorrow will be the quicker day.
You seem very comfortable with this track.
Yeah, I like this track, yeah.
So this is now your 3rd fastest, your 3rd pole position for the year?
No, I was also quickest on Friday and Spa. I was some other places I was quickest.
Do you think there's anything left in the car for the race? Can you go quicker?
Oh yeah, we have to drive, do everything. The car is not so bad.
You're confident of a victory here?
Oh, I will try, yeah, I will try my best.
Well done.
Well, Gerhard Berger, in fact, I might tell you, is also suffering from a cold or a flu. But then again, he seems to go better when he's feeling unwell, because that's happened several times this year. He says it's from air conditioning, either from the aircraft or from his hotels, but he certainly isn't feeling great. He was feeling very bad, he said this morning. My goodness, if I feel that bad and I drive that fast, maybe we should all get a little infection.
Here, here. Now, you saw that Nelson Piquet was suffering from what drivers often talk to you about after practice, and that's traffic. His racing line and speed were interfered with by slower cars in front of him, but he's kept out on the circuit. He has got the Lotus of Ayrton Senna, his Brazilian countryman, but by no means his Brazilian friend, in front of him. And if ever there was a red rag to a bull, that's it. Because Nelson Piquet will be out to show Ayrton Senna, just to put him in his place, that he is faster here at Adelaide, and he certainly is at the moment. Senna second on is 6th on the grid, and Piquet 2nd on the grid. And I've got my stopwatch running on Nelson Piquet, who's going for that time of 1:17.267 of Gerhard Berger.
Let's see if Piquet gets up close behind Senna, and let's see if Senna lets him through. Piquet is giving him space here. In fact, I think he may have dropped back a little bit to give Senna a start on this lap, because Senna could change the whole picture here.
Piquet's just gone round in 1:18.98, which is far too slow, and we're into the last lap, I think, now, because according to the timing here, we're on 8 minutes past 2, and there was Alboreto spinning, and this practice is due to finish at 9 minutes past. I'm looking at Glenn Dix, the now world-famous starter and checkered flag man, and he's got the checkered flag ready to come out onto the track and spin, and that's Michele Alboreto going off. And he rocks the car forward, blasted over the curb, but there he goes. And now I can see Glenn Dix looking down at his watch. It's very close to finishing time of this first 60-minute qualifying session, as up to 3rd on the grid goes Alain Prost with his time of 1 minute 18.2, which is exactly 1 second slower than Gerhard Berger. As you look at Alboreto, who is now in 4th place, and we join Satoru Nakajima on a flying lap at Adelaide in the Lotus Honda. Into the S's and through them, and now up to Wakefield turn. Watch his hand as he comes down to 2nd gear. Up Flinders Street, left onto East Terrace Bend, 2nd gear, up to Flinders Bend, right. Now watch his hand again, up through the gears, 1, and again. Now this is Markett's turn, Stag turn. Look for the pub on the left as he goes into the right-hander onto Rundle Road. And there is with the McLaren that spun off. It's Alain Prost has spun again. As down to the right-hander. There he goes now. Look at Prost spinning up. He won't have done his under tray any good at all there.
Not at all. In fact, he's been pulled straight back, and it looks like he may have done some damage because it just didn't restart fast enough. And the checkered flag is being thrown, and in the meantime, Ayrton Senna has got himself up into 4th fastest. He's passed Alboreto, he's passed Goodson, so the top order is now Berger, Piquet, Prost, Senna, Alboreto, Goodson, and Fabi. That's the top 7.
And as Satoru Nakajima exits the right-hander and into the start and finish straight, there is the position at the end of the first 60-minute qualifying session as Stefan Johansson courteously stops to give his team leader, world champion Alain Prost, a comfortable ride back to the pits on the side part of his McLaren. It is Gerhard Berger in pole position, which he occupied at the beginning of practice, lost to Alain Prost, who lost it to Nelson Piquet, who then lost it to Gerhard Berger. So, for the 3rd time in 5 races, it's Berger in pole, and there is Piquet spinning. They're all going off. Berger fastest, Piquet 2nd in trying to take the pole. Prost in 3rd position, Senna is 4th, Alboreto is 5th, Boutsen is 6th, Fabi is 7th, Patrese is in 8th position. Philippe Streff is now, Alio is the fastest 3.5 litre car in 16th place, and there is still tomorrow, Saturday's final 60-minute qualifying session to upset everything that has happened today. Racing car. Coming towards us, Yannick Dalmas, the French driver, and there is Prost. Jackie, when you come out of the pit lane in the car that they have done 2.5 hours of practice in yesterday, the 60 minutes qualifying and preceding that the 1.5 hours untimed, what are you looking for?
First of all, you've got to be sure, Murray, that the work that's been carried out in the car has left it in the same handling condition as you enjoyed the previous day, because you've probably worked during those 2.5 hours to get the car up, to remove the sort of understeer that might have been troubling you, or maybe trying to reduce the oversteer, and you've got the so-called perfect balance. And it's very difficult to plug cars together overnight to be exactly the same, particularly if they've been broken down, to track test them and to make sure that everything's in working order. Perhaps there may even have been an engine change. So therefore, everything has been reset. And of course, those mechanics, and this is the final Grand Prix of the year, they're just a little bit tired. They've just had enough motor racing for one 12-month period. Perhaps they haven't just got the geometry as you would like it. So these first few tentative laps are to see how the car feels and if it feels just as it did yesterday.
Now we're looking at Andrea De Cesaris. This is a view that none of us have ever seen before. The wide-eyed Andrea De Cesaris in his Brabham, looked at backwards by the camera, and you can see the course receding in the background. You can see how quickly these cars are going.
One of the big things you should look for here is you will see the amount of neck movement and head movement that the driver gets when you get a shot like we've just seen, because racing drivers go through an amazing amount of torture. And there's that camera. You can see the camera looking back on Andrea De Cesaris. He almost has to look around the car. And there's the shot again. Look at the shot going through that driver's neck. Racing drivers have very, very strong necks, but they get enormous wear on their vertebrae, on their spinal cord and their neck. There's a lot of calcium collected because simply the shock and the wear and tear in racing nowadays is horrific. But this is a brand new shot, and it's the first time that I've ever seen it, and I think it's a world premiere as far as this is concerned.
Whoa, and off goes one of the Lolas, and now we are with De Cesaris coming into the pit lane. You can see that the tyres are slowing down. Now he's in his Brabham pit position. He's wheeled backwards, and there is Ayrton Senna, who didn't go all that well by his high standards yesterday. 4th fastest in timed practice. I say timed, they are both timed, of course. This so-called untimed session is actually timed to 1,000th of a second, but those times do not count for grid positions. You're looking at a new car and driver combination for the Adelaide Grand Prix. And it's an interesting story because Patrese had signed to take the place of Nelson Piquet in the Williams team next year as a result of Piquet going to Lotus. But then Nigel Mansell crashed in Japan. There was a seat in the Williams team going spare. But naturally, Frank Williams, Honda, who provide the motive power, and the sponsors wanted the best possible man to drive this car in this critical last race. And Frank Williams and Bernie Ecclestone got together, Bernie Ecclestone being the head man of the Brabham team, and they agreed that Patrese would join early. There is Alboreto spinning off. Now you see there's a big problem, the high curves. He rode up on the curb, now he's got to go off it again, and in those circumstances there is always a danger of the under tray being damaged.
Certainly is, and we did see Nakajima, who we're looking over the shoulder of right now, ride over some curves around this Adelaide racetrack, and it was the bucking bronco ride, and that's what Alboreto just got. So here we have again our Thompson camera looking over the shoulder of Nakajima. He's made little errors of judgments for us before that have been most entertaining. I would hate to suggest that to him again today. I'm sure he wouldn't want to listen. But before the weekend's out, I fear that we're going to see another strange view of the Adelaide racetrack.
Into the pits. So in comes Nakajima, out goes De Cesaris and us. We don't get much rest, do we?
Well, apart from anything else, we've chosen two of the most spectacular drivers in the season, in fact, to have cars with cameras on them. One's famous for going backwards when he should be going forwards, and the other one's had little incidents while going forwards that have made him go backwards, if you understand what I'm saying.
Well, I'm sure most people will, Jackie. Going forwards, usually into somebody like Derek Warwick, which Nakajima did, and conclusively removed the whole of... See the sparks flying up. And Nakajima removed his right wheel and suspension. Now, you can get a feel of the tremendous power and the acceleration and the grip, of course, of the cars. There's Stag, there's the Stag. But now we're going from Stag Turn down Rundle Road into the Brewery Bend. You've seen Nakajima do it. Now, this is the bit that Nakajima did a lap ago, and we are doing over 200 miles an hour now. And there's the sparks flying from the titanium plugs, and that is just liquid to clear the lens. Nothing to worry about. It's not, it's the turbo. The turbo, there was a blast of turbo fire, and it looks to me as De Cesaris has blown it.
He's switched the engine off. The engine, he's freewheeling now. The smoke is coming out. You're seeing the smoke coming out. What a wonderful shot. You've just seen history, as far as I'm concerned, in motor racing. The flame that you saw there was the flame coming out of the turbo exhaust. The smoke that you're now seeing, of course, is clearly our smoke. We've just been on board of about an 850 horsepower blow-up. Let's see it one more time. And it's at this point that the flame comes out, and that's hot business. What's happened is the spinner's probably gone. He's blipping the engine now. He's kicked it out of gear. Now he's switched the engine off. The smoke is the white smoke that was coming from the back of the car. He's pulled off the line so that any oil that might have been dropping has been okay. Look at our camera. There is De Cesaris with the blue glove on, looking down. There's his helmet, the fireman on the left-hand side. These are truly historic shots.
Good day, Andrea. We are now in the 21st minute of this 1.5-hour practice session, which does not count for the grid, and the fastest so far is Ayrton Senna, 1 minute 21.33, which is 4 seconds off the pole position time of Gerhard Berger yesterday afternoon. But as I keep saying, there is nothing significant about that, because what they are primarily doing now is to set the cars up.
Well, I hope you enjoyed those pictures as much as we did, and I must say our Wide World of Sports camera and crew, the whole lot, have done a fantastic job first 2 years, and they've made a very good start in the third year.
They just get better and better, don't they, yeah. Brian Morelli and the gang, and as Jackie Stewart said, that was history there to see Andre de Crasheris with the burnt-out Brabham, and we were out there with him.
And wasn't it fantastic? That's the other thing about Jackie's commentary, just sort of saying there he's blipped the engine a couple of times, now he's turning it off. Absolutely amazing. I mean, he's got fantastic knowledge, as we all know, but he's also got the ability to impart it.
To communicate that. Okie doke. Very exciting weekend of motor racing coming up again here in Adelaide, and we'll be back with more of this morning's untimed practice in just a moment.
G'day folks, I'm Stefan Johansson. Stay watching the 1987 Australian Grand Prix on 9's Wide World of Sports.
And there it is at the back of the Brabham. That is our Thompson car camera that brought you those amazing pictures of Andre de Cesaris when he blew that turbo. And as you can see, not much damage to the Brabham, and certainly nothing like we saw yesterday when Alex Caffey's Ocella caught fire and just about burnt out.
Yes, it was rather appropriate, I think, that he's got sponsors in the coffee-making business. They certainly had a pretty warm brew going yesterday.
It's one way or another with the Ferrari going so quick and the Italians like de Crasheris and Caffey getting into trouble. It's been a very lively weekend for our friends from Italy.
It certainly has. And, well, that's not the only spectacular things that we've seen here in Adelaide. There have been plenty of spinners. In fact, we saw yesterday more spinners than we see in a season at the Sydney Cricket Ground. And as we go back to the second session of untimed practice, which has just finished a few moments ago here at the Adelaide circuit, let's have a look at more of the untimed practice with Murray and Jackie.
Now there is Ivan Capelli, the Italian in the march, and you can see what's happened to him. I was talking about the high curbs a moment ago. Well, Capelli has literally got his march wedged on the curb. It's rocking on the centre point of the car. You can see that the rear wheels are clear of the ground, so there's no way he can get traction. He's trying, you see. There are the wheels spinning round. They're not even throwing up the gravel because there is a gap between the bottom of the tyres and the ground. And the only way they're going to get Capelli off is to stop the practice and physically lift him off. And I suspect that that is what will have to happen, because there is Yannick Delmas stopped as well, and they will need to clear the course.
And there you see Modena. Modena is standing around without any overalls on, Murray.
Yes, it's very unfortunate for the young Italian, the ex-world champion kartist, because he will be very sick. He's losing vital time on the track. One of the Brabhams has been blown up very comprehensively when we had that exciting vision of the fire from the turbo in De Cesaris' car. De Cesaris has gone out in the spare because he is now, as he humorously pointed out in the pits yesterday, Brabham's #1 driver, and Stefano Modena is very much the #2, and Modena's car, which you can see in the background, has obviously got a problem.
Now, of course, in this session, there could be several of the cars running with fairly full tanks. As we look down on Gerhard Berger, the pole sitter, here he's out in the race car in his #28 Ferrari. going not in a hard lap, a smooth, clean run he had through there into traffic, using the road, getting past one of the Brabhams there. That, of course, would be the Cesares as he accelerates away. Another car there, the Lotto car behind, the Ligier of René Arnoux, as they accelerate. And you can see Gerhard Berger. He's tall, he's thin, he's light. No racing driver is heavy today. There are no heavy racing drivers. I suppose Nigel Mansell...
Now that Alan Jones is out.
Well, poor old Alan's put on a few pounds of weight that would certainly be difficult for him to get into the crowded space of a modern Formula One car, but all of those drivers are very light, and the very good ones are the lightest ones. You look at Alan Prost as we look down from our helicopter shot here along the main Brabham Straight, where Gerhard Berger will be getting up to 200 miles an hour. He's down into first gear now, using the racing line, going round there with a diamond cut to save using extra inches of the road.
What a very pretty motor car that is.
And what a wonderful name. The name of Ferrari. No matter where we go, Murray, around the world, there are more Ferrari flags and supporters to that team than any other team in racing. Lotus people know the name of. Maybe Brabham they know the name of very well too. But Viva Ferrari is what everybody calls for, everybody shouts for. Italians around the world enormously patriotic. And of course, Mr. Ferrari himself, a living legend at 89 years of age, still alive, still very much into his motor racing. He lives for it, in fact.
Ferrari are the only team currently in Grand Prix racing who competed in the first World Championship race, which was in 1950. For those of you who are interested in the order, although it's not terribly significant, Senna is fastest at the present moment, and we are in the 37th minute of this 1.5 hour practice session. Senna fastest, Boutsen second, Patrese third, Berger fourth, Fabi fifth, De Cesaris sixth. So it's significant that the two Benettons are in the top six.
That is a normally aspirated engine, but he certainly has having a lot of smoke coming out of one exhaust pipe, the left-hand bank. It looks to me like he's blown a piston, perhaps. He may have popped a valve, and therefore there's a lot of smoke coming out. He's looking in his rear-view mirror, and he can see that smoke. And therefore he'll have to pay attention. He's dropping oil on the racetrack. We hear it's being reported up from the clerk of the course that Marina's car is dropping oil. The oil flags are out as they follow him along. That's a yellow and red striped flag.
Alain Prost there. Prost, not unusually, is way down the pecking order at the moment. He's not worried about times. What he is worried about is getting the car set up. And as a matter of fact, sometimes the times you see can be very misleading. Nelson Piquet, for instance, is not above sandbagging. He will go as fast as he possibly can on one part of the course, then slow up. Then he'll go as fast as he can on the part of the course where he slowed up on the previous lap. And the object of the exercise is to appear to be going slower than he is, whilst at the same time really working out how quickly he can go. And then he puts it all together, and everybody is shattered when they find that he's in pole position.
And this is what Alain Prost sometimes does too. And by the way, at the moment he is speaking to his crew. You could see him gesturing with his finger, but in fact what he was doing is talking to the man with his back to you right now. That's the conversation that's going on. Alan may well be saying he needs more roll stiffness or more ride height or more spring damping. And one of the most important things of even doing one or two corners quickly is to be able to find out if you can get rid of the understeer. You go out, you do a series of 3 corners, and then you come back in for adjustment.
That man has not gone raving mad, sticking a needle into the tyres. That is a tyre temperature gauge. It's got a needle on it. He puts the needle in the left-hand side of the tread, the middle of the tread, and the right-hand side of the tread. And the object of the exercise is to get even temperatures across the tyre, because then they know that the whole of the tyre tread is on the ground, therefore giving the maximum traction, and as a result of that, the maximum grip and speed. Darrell Eastlake in the pits.
Well, thank you, Murray. Alan Jones. Alain Prost has been very quiet over the weekend, but he really has been working very hard in the pits with the car.
You'll find, I wouldn't be at all surprised if Prost emerges probably one of the quickest in the untimed warm-up tomorrow. and he'll be there in the race, because that's exactly the way they work. They just quietly get the head down and get on with it, and they set the car up for the race, very much like the Williams team. But somehow the McLaren with the tag engine seems to always come strong on race day, and they work very much towards that.
Working on the suspension for a long time yesterday afternoon.
Well, they're probably having to tune the car up and tailor it to suit the circuit. Maybe that's a different car from last year. I'm sure it would be. It has quite a few modifications, and they would have been doing quite a bit to it to set it up, and you'll probably find that he'll make great inroads this afternoon in qualifying as well.
That's it from the pits, Murray Walker.
Stefan Johansson will desperately be hoping to break a record on Sunday, and that is his record of never having won a Grand Prix, because Sunday will be his last drive for the McLaren team, and although his chances seem to have virtually disappeared of getting a Grand Prix drive next year, if he did well on Sunday, it might just tip the balance. Stefan has driven for Ferrari, he's driven in the Spirit team, he's driven for Tyrrell, he's driven for Tolman, and now he's with McLaren as the Ferrari runs wide, you saw there, to the left of the curbing, and through goes Stefan Johansson. I don't know why the Ferrari ran wide. It looked to me actually as though it was likely to be stopping, because he wasn't going all that quick.
Stefan Johansson there in untimed practice on Saturday morning. That was run at Adelaide Grand Prix, the third Australian Grand Prix, and we just heard there Alan Jones talking about the McLaren team, and in particular Alain Prost, and the way they've been so successful. I know he's your choice, Gibbo, for this Grand Prix.
Yeah, I'm a fan of Alain Prost, and it's interesting this year to hear everybody here in Adelaide say he is the greatest driver in the world. The first couple of times we were down here, PK had his fans, and well, they all have their fans, but nobody seems to argue with the fact that Alain Prost, the professor, is the king.
And such a likeable little bloke. Everyone seems to like him as well, which is a bit unusual in this sport.
That's right. In a sport where there are a few difficult customers, the champ, as so often happens, the outstanding character, is a lovely fella. All right, we'll be back with more of untimed practice here on Wide World of Sports in just a moment.
Hi, I'm Richie Benno. I hope you're enjoying the Australian...
With a last on Sunday, because although it hasn't been officially announced, it seems certain that this quiet little laid-back Italian is leaving Grand Prix racing after Sunday and going back to the American Indianapolis kart racing, kart with a C and not with a K, in which he has done so well in the past. Fabi has never made the impression on Grand Prix racing that a lot of people expected him to. He's very much respected by Benetton for his testing ability, but that testing ability has not been translated into good race finishes. In fact, the best that Fabi has been able to do this year was a third place in Austria. He's had a couple of fifths and a fourth and a sixth, but wins are what people are after, and certainly teams and sponsors are after, and I think Benetton will be politely showing Fabi the door and allowing a new man in. There is speculation about whether it will be Alessandro Nannini, the Minardi driver, or even Johnny Herbert, the popular and gifted British Formula 3 champion of 1987. Well, one of the men we are sure will be racing is Ayrton Senna, and Daryl's got something to tell us about him.
Yes, well, thanks, Murray. Ayrton Senna has just come into the pits, and Alan wasn't terribly impressive yesterday, but really quick this morning.
Well, that's right, Daryl. They've obviously gone back and checked up on the computer and done their homework and altered a few things, and it's responded, and he's quickest this morning. I would say they're probably using half the full tanks and trying out race conditions, as indeed most of the people are earlier today. But at this point in time, it's looking very good for the race for them.
They have been spending a lot of time looking at the engine and topping up oil all over the weekend.
Well, I suppose they're just checking fluids. I mean, the Japanese are probably doing their own homework, seeing how much it's using in what space of time, making sure that they've got everything under control for the race tomorrow.
And now we see Gerhard Berger back on the racetrack, the Italian flame red Ferrari getting around here, and of course we're looking for him to slip in a quick one. He's sitting at fourth fastest right now. Prost is fifth, and of course still Senna, Boutsen and Patrese are up there in front, but Berger, I think you'll see, just to catch everybody by surprise. Look, he's on a quick one. He's over the curbs, and look at how cars leap over those curbs. They're quite high here in Adelaide, and the drivers should really pay attention, because A wheel can get hooked up in a curb, and of course Nigel Mansell sitting at home in the Isle of Man because of just doing that very thing. You can't take liberties in racing cars. Familiarity breeds contempt, and if you use the curb long enough, you will make mistakes. Let's see how Berger drives round here, staying away from them. That was a neat exit without going over the curb.
Berger was fastest in this 1.5-hour non-qualifying session yesterday. His time of 1:18.351 was in fact faster than Nigel Mansell's pole position last year, and he's significantly slower today. Berger at the moment is third fastest, 1:21. That's 3 seconds slower than he was in the equivalent session yesterday, but that still doesn't mean anything. We are only now in the 58th minute of this practice period, which lasts an hour and a half, and I'm pretty confident at the end of it, in the closing minutes, when they've got the car set up, they reduce the fuel load, they've got the suspension the way they want it, they will make sure that everything is right for qualifying by going for a quick lap. And if Berger or whoever is going to be fastest in this session today is not very close to that 1:18.3 of yesterday, I will be very surprised.
Well, I think Berger, in fact, may now be on a quick lap. He cooled it halfway round that last lap, in fact, and in the meantime, Derek Warwick has spun off, joining the ranks of spinners of today. So we'll look out for Berger here. If he gets a clean lap, I think you'll see him getting into the 20s, if not faster. I don't know how much fuel he's carrying. It would be difficult to say, but he's certainly on a quick one right now. Look at the car darting. Let's just see how well he turns into the corner as he goes down the main straight. Here he comes, getting the brakes on. You see the sparks. Not using all of the road. I'm not sure whether he's on a quick one. No, he wasn't using all of the exit there, but he is quite fast. He's faster than the last one, I would suggest. Watch the clock. If he's going to be much faster, he's got to get round this corner. Yes, he's quicker this time, but it won't be a particularly fast lap. But I think he might just be able to scratch. Yes, that's fast.
That's the fastest we've had today. That's the fastest today. And Senna has got it wrong. Nakajima has got it wrong. Senna's got it right, of course, but Nakajima has gone off on the street circuit that he does not like.
Well, we may well see a replay of this. This is up at the hairpin, I think, that Nakajima has gone off. Let's wait and see it. And here he comes. There he turns into the corner. He's got understeer. He accelerates along here. He's got no trouble there. He's coming to the last corner on the racetrack here. And now and he's got opposite lock. He just, the tail end kicked out there, and he reverses. We're looking in his rear view mirror to see what he was going to hit.
Now Senna is speeding up. You're looking at one of Grand Prix's top drivers. The man, the Brazilian, who has 6 Grand Prix victories behind him. He will be competing in his 62nd Grand Prix on Sunday. Most of them have been in a Lotus. Very contentious personality, Ayrton Senna. Very single-minded, very determined to succeed. He broke his contract with Tolman in controversial circumstances, bought himself out of it so that he could get a better ride with Lotus. He has been with the Lotus team now, the outfit that he's with, for 3 years, 1985, 86 and 87. And next year, he is going to the McLaren team with Honda engines to partner the great Alain Prost. There are people who say that Senna will be a real danger to Prost. He's coming up to the line now. Let's see how quickly he has gone.
He's into second fastest. He's improved his time a little bit, but certainly hasn't gone fast enough to go ahead of Berger.
Yes, Riccardo Patrese trying very hard today. He nearly lost it then, but succeeded in keeping the Williams on the track.
Patrase's in fact on a fast lap right now. You could see the smoke coming out of the exhaust pipe of Patrase's engine, and that means that they're running a very rich mixture. This is now Nelson Piquet, who is going out, who has now spotted himself into number 2 position in this 1.5 hour session.
Alain Prost, he doesn't give a darn, but nevertheless, having said that, I'll prove myself wrong, because Alain Prost is now fastest. He's done 27 laps today. We are only having 9 minutes to go. 1 minute and 21 seconds of this session has been completed, and zap, up to the top of the timing list has gone number 1, Alain Prost. Yes, this is the 60 minutes which matters more than any other that we have had since practicing started yesterday, because in the next 60 minutes, the pole position and the grid positions for tomorrow's Australian Grand Prix, the third in the series since it started in 1985, is going to be away. Now, that is Martin Brundle. The question that we are all asking ourselves is the track, in fact, slower today than it was yesterday? You may say, why should it be any slower? It's the same track. That is perfectly true, but the weather conditions are different. That is the speed, the time they're all going for. Gerhard Berger in the Ferrari yesterday was fastest. That is the man who had pole position in Portugal and in Japan in his Ferrari. Nice to see them back at the top, to put it mildly. In second position, the new world champion, Nelson Piquet. In third position, the world champion of 1986 and 1985, Alain Prost with his McLaren. Then another brilliant Brazilian, Senna, and fifth, Michele Alboreto in the second Ferrari. Thierry Boutsen, who we expect to do better, sixth. His teammate Fabi, seventh. Riccardo Patrese out for the first time in the Williams yesterday, eighth position. Stefan Johansson, the second McLaren driver, ninth. And Andrea De Cesaris in the Brabham in 10th place. And there is the Brabham of Andrea De Cesaris, 10th on the grid. I was saying the question is the track slower today than it was yesterday? It's the same track, but why should it be slower?
First of all, I think the temperature is definitely higher today here in Adelaide. Turbocharged engines don't like the increased temperature. They would much prefer a cooler temperature. They work more efficiently under those circumstances. But I do believe that there's a little hedging going on. The Ferrari people definitely felt that the track was going to be slower this afternoon, as Alain Prost, with brand new tyres, you can see the stickers are still on the tyres, he's accelerating out of the pit lane. I think what's going to happen is the last 10 minutes of this hour is going to be very feverish, because I think what's going to occur is that most of the fast teams will keep a set of tyres in hand for the final 10 minutes, because if someone does put a quick one in, they will then be able to retaliate. The tyres that are being used are the C compound Goodyears. That's the same compound as was used last year here in Adelaide, but it is a different construction. That's to say, the internals of the tyre are different. This tyre is exactly the same tyre as was used in the Grand Prix of Hungary, so it's just coincidental that it matches well with the road surface here in Adelaide.
Tyres are absolutely critical in qualifying, as in the race. There was a time last year, for instance, when the qualifying tyres would only last 3 laps. That is Michele Alboreto, and he is in 5th position on the grid at the present moment. You can see on his front wheels there that they have electric blankets which have been put on to preheat the tyres almost to racing temperature, so that as soon as the driver leaves the pit lane, there is no delay in working the tyres up to racing temperature. They have to be a certain heat in order for the rubber to be as pliable as possible and to grip the ground as much as possible. So at the last second, off come the tyre heaters. Then the driver knows he can drive at race speed straight away, as Stefan Johansson, number 2, is doing now. He is down in 9th position on the grid, having his last drive in the McLaren tag team in Adelaide on Sunday, after having driven for Ferrari last year, having driven for Tyrrell, for Tolman and the Spirit team, and that's his teammate, the great, and I use the word advisedly, Alain Prost. Cracking round now. Alain Prost has gone round and done a pretty slow lap, 4 minutes 12.9, very slow, and that's of course because he was just motoring round slowly to gently run everything in, get the tyres up to their working temperature. And a man that everybody is going to be watching with enormous interest is sitting in that car there. Ayrton Senna, the brilliant Brazilian. Behind him is a Honda engine. This is his last drive for Lotus at the Australian Grand Prix, because next year he will be driving for the McLaren team with Honda engines, and off goes Michele Alboreto. Now there's a very interesting situation here, because Michele Alboreto, the lead driver in the Ferrari team for some years, is actually being shown the way this year by Gerhard Berger, who has out-qualified and out-raced him. So Alboreto will be out to get his leadership in the team back again.
It's a tough life. What happens is that you're number one, and you're up there as a target for your number two. The young lion came into Ferrari at the beginning of this season, and what happens is he immediately goes faster. We expected him to go faster in the odd practice session. Youth and exuberance, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed enthusiasm normally does that. But we expected Alboreto's knowledge and experience and maturity would really make the difference up in races, and therefore allow him still to have that number one above his head, at least in the Ferrari team. That has not happened this year, and seriously, Alboreto now is faced with probably being trounced by the Italian press by the fact that Berger is the fastest man and the man to beat. Now they've lowered the suspension in this Ferrari so that it's really almost running on the road so that a fast time can be achieved, and Alboreto will want to prove that fast time to at least be competitive with his teammate.
A quick word about that, because as you look at the car coming towards us and now away from us, you can look underneath it and you can see that there is a minimum clearance. Look now, you see? But the closer you can get the car to the ground, the better the aerodynamics are. The better the aerodynamics are, the greater the grip of the tyres on the ground. And in order to get the car as close as possible to the ground, they literally have titanium plugs on the bottom of them, which allows them to drag along the ground when they're bumpy, and you'll see sparks striking up off the back of the Ferrari. It's nothing to worry about, but it is indicative of the fact that they are really going for it. And now, in the 60-minute final qualifying session, we are into the 8th minute. Thus far, nobody has gone faster today than they went yesterday. Everybody is out on the track, including Stefano Modena, the brilliant Italian. There's the sparks coming up, and that is Teo Fabi in the background in the inset. He is another Italian. He is going to be... And off has gone Campos. Well, it wouldn't be a Grand Prix if we hadn't seen Adrian Campos parking his car somewhere where it shouldn't be, and he's kept his unblemished record here at Adelaide. That is one of the 3.5-litre Lola cars with the atmospheric engine. It is being driven by Yannick Dalmas, and here is a car to watch. I think Alboreto had off. That's Campos going off the track. I've said before, I don't want to overstate it too much, but this young man is definitely over his head in Grand Prix racing. And Michele Alboreto now is working up to race speed. Let's follow him round this Adelaide circuit. You can see by the posture of the car, the stance of the man in it, and the way it is progressing around the track with particular reference to the APCs of the corners. He's coming up to market to Stag Turn. Now, as we look down at the helicopter, he heads towards Brewery Bend, the right-hander, which he takes in 3rd or 4th gear. Round it he goes. Now he's up to the fastest part of the course, approaching 200 miles an hour, over 300 Ks. He's got a slower car in front of him. He will need to get past before... Well, it's Dalmas that he's catching, and that will slow him down.
He's pulled out. He's stopped his fast lap. He doesn't want to get his tyres over hot for no reason at all. He judged that he was not going to do it this lap. You will not see a fast time for Alboreto here. Dalmas has put the cap on that. He will, however, wait to see if he can get Dalmas on the pit straight, but there's another car in front of that. It's Eddie Cheever in one of the USF&G Aero cars. The chances are Alboreto will cool it on this one also. There's no use of using up traffic as a slowing down method if you're going to go for a quick lap.
In the 10th minute, we have a driver who has gone faster today than he went yesterday. Martin Brundle in the German Zach Speed has improved his time by 0.2 of a second, but is still 18th on the grid. But that's interesting, and it shows that the track for some can be faster. But Brundle, way down the pecking order in 18th position, would be somebody you would expect to improve his time. As Alboreto pulls ahead of the Tyrrell of Jonathan Palmer, who is passed by Eddie Cheever, who has got right behind him for 3.5 litre load. You can see the heat here at Adelaide, with the heat haze shimmering up from the road.
Well, the final hour of Grand Prix practice here in Adelaide, and we'll be right back after this.
Ready for the getaway with you?
Welcome back to Wide World of Sports, and you could not have come back at a more interesting moment, because this is Nelson Piquet, the world champion of 1987, in the passive suspension Williams, going for a really quick lap. Only 2 men have improved on yesterday's time so far, Martin Brundle and Dalmas, but they're starting now to improve all the way round, and Piquet has just gone round in 1:18.6, which is 0.6 of a second slower than he went yesterday. In this practice session, each driver is allowed only 2 sets of tyres. So what normally happens is they go out early in the session if you're a Williams driver, and now we're with Satoru Nakajima going down to Ketterville Terrace at over 200 miles an hour, getting ready to brake and change down for the hairpin and racetrack hairpin. Now into paddock turn. Look at the crowd. Down to Foster's hairpin. And with the gold stands coming into sight, so does the start and finish straight as Satoru Nakajima goes through, and his time is still slower than it was yesterday. Yesterday he was 14th fastest, 1 minute 21.708. But just listen to the engine. To the right-hander of Brewery Bend, and this is the quick bit. Nakajima goes for it. Top gear, 200 miles an hour. Down through the box now. From 6th into 1st. Nakajima's target, his fastest so far, is 1 minute 21.708. Is he going to go faster this lap? This is the last corner. It's going to be a close thing. Yes! You have ridden with Satoru Nakajima on his fastest lap so far here at Adelaide. And now, in the 17th minute, it's still Gerhard Berger fastest, and he has not yet gone out this afternoon. Nelson Piquet has, but his time is slower than it was yesterday, so maybe the track is slower.
Well, I don't know, but for Nakajima, I can promise you that his pulse rate is up close to 200. He will be certainly taking a lot out of himself. And I went down to the pits between practice and qualifying, and I saw a chiropractor working on Nelson Piquet. He's got a sore back and a painful neck. An Australian chiropractor who's been brought in by the Williams team is working with the Williams drivers, was looking after Nelson Piquet just, I suppose, 10 minutes before practice started. So let's see if a little bit of bone cracking could help him. There he's second fastest, the time 1 minute 18.01. He will be looking for a fast time. I don't think he's on a quick one right now. Nelson Piquet, a very healthy young man nowadays, looking after his body very well, keeping down to weight, having a lot of exercise, looking after the nutrition. Racing drivers paying extra attention to this nowadays. Was a very good tennis player, incidentally, before he became a racing driver. A lot of sportsmen have adapted from one sport to another, and this is certainly true of Nelson Piquet.
In the 18th minute of this 60-minute practice session, here are the men who are faster today than they were yesterday. Nakajima, who is 14th. Brundle, who is in 18th place. Dalmas, who is 22nd. Arnoux, who is 24th. Campos, who is 25th and just scraping in on the grid. And that is very significant. Berger, with 1:17.267 from yesterday, has still not gone out. He's saving his ammunition until the very last stages. Piquet has, that is Ayrton Senna in the background, getting ready. He has on his fireproof balaclava helmet. He will have very heavy Nomex underwear, long johns, long-sleeved underwear, very heavy Nomex socks, Nomex boots. That is a triple layer overall that he has on, and they cost over $2,500 a set, those overalls. On top of all that, he puts his helmet, and that is the weighing procedure that you saw there. But now, Patrese, who is 6th fastest, is the highest of the men who have gone round quicker today than yesterday. He has improved his time by 7/10 of a second, and if Patrese can do it, maybe some of the others can. That is the monitor on Alboretto's Ferrari, and there is Michele himself sitting in his V6 turbo car.
Incidentally, Michele Alboreto, like his teammate, is not in good physical condition this weekend. He's got dreadful hay fever, eyes are running all the time, nose is choked up, not enjoying the weekend physically at all. As I said earlier, if you heard the previous telecast, Berger is suffering from a fever. I think he's a slight hypochondriac, because I asked if he had a temperature, and he said, well, the thermometer says there is no temperature, but I'm sure I've got one. So I think he's really looking for trouble. However, on the other hand, Heinz Prüller, the very successful journalist and television commentator from Austria, tells us reliably that Berger only drives when he's feeling very bad. The worse he feels, the faster he goes.
That is true. In Portugal, Berger was complaining in the same sort of way, saying, I have flu, I feel very sick, but it didn't stop him from getting pole position. It didn't stop him from leading the race for most of it and finishing in second place only when he had a lapse of concentration and lost first position to the man you're looking at now, number 1 Alain Prost, who won in Portugal, who won in Belgium and who won in Brazil. 3 times winner this year. But Alain Prost is a double world champion. He's lost that privilege in 1987. He's only 4th in the championship now, behind Senna 3rd, Mansell 2nd and Piquet 1st. But now you're looking at one of the top men, if not the top man of Grand Prix racing. Just watch the way he smoothly and effortlessly controls the car. He is on the razor edge between getting round the corners as quickly as possible and flying off into the concrete. But still, nobody above 6th position has gone faster today than they did yesterday. Alboreto has not. Prost, that you are looking at, has not. Piquet has not. And Berger has not gone out.
Certain changes were made to these cars, and there we've got a fire again. Marino's got a problem, and the fire extinguishers are right on top of it this time. That was a very quick one. Now that is not a turbocharged fire. This is not a turbocharged car. This is a normally aspirated car, and that's a fuel fire. It's not an oil fire. There was not much black smoke coming from that. That was a fuel fire. I suspect that a fuel line became detached from itself, got onto the hot exhaust pipes, vaporized and went up. that could easily have been a very nasty situation.
Yes, and I suspect there is some sort of installation problem with that AGS car, because Moreno, in this morning's practice, blew up his engine very conclusively. Here he is touring in. You can see the flames licking out of the back underneath the engine cover through the radiator outlets, and Moreno obviously kept going until he saw some fire marshals at the ready, and 10 out of 10 to them. They were really onto it very quickly indeed, efficiently putting it out.
It looked as if, in fact, they crossed the track to get to that fire, so let's take our hats off to them, as you say, Murray. They had a little hiccup yesterday in firefighting, but they've got this one right. This is Channel 9's Wide World of Sports. We're in Adelaide for the Grand Prix, and we'll be right back after this.
It is fast and furious back here at the Adelaide Grand Prix racetrack. We are in the 26th minute in this 60-minute final qualification practice session, and there is Gerhard Berger, the man who is in pole position at the moment, on line for his third pole position of the year, waiting to go out in the Ferrari, but the red flag is out, so there is trouble around the track. The Grand Prix practice is being stopped, and that will be the reason. Piercarlo Ghinzani's car is on fire. Why isn't Ghinzani getting out? He's obviously not too worried. But the practice is being stopped.
Well, it is, after all, a cigarette sponsorship, and it is smoking well, and it is French tobacco. Ghinzani obviously is inhaling it helpfully. I don't know, he's sitting in the car. Maybe he's fallen asleep.
The black flag says you must stop at his pit. I suspect that Ghinzani would be only too happy if he could get there, because he's sitting there with an obvious problem, which is stopping him from moving.
He's on brand new tyres. He must just have left his pit. The fire has gone out. The rescue vehicle has come to him. I think also a combination of the car that was previously in fire. Moreno's car will be towed out of the way because it was in potentially a precarious position. So a combination of both, I think, really will allow the racetrack to be cleared. Now, this means that qualifying time, the clock will be stopped. In other words, this is not lost time from the drivers, and the clock has stopped at 25 minutes and 27 seconds. So until we get sorted out, and these are the mechanics of the Ligier of Ghinzani's car looking at the monitor within the garage. All the garages here in Adelaide have TV monitors. Ghinzani is still sitting in the car, and of course that is not the scene of Ghinzani. That is Alain Prost with his teammate Stefan Johansson under the umbrella. A little more leisurely time, and there's Nakajima with our camera on board. He's sitting at the end of the pit lane, waiting to go out, sitting behind one of the Lola cars, the car, in fact, driven by Philip Alliot.
Well, if there is one man who is unlucky as you look at the grid positions so far in Grand Prix racing, it is Piercarlo Ghinzani. He's a 35-year-old Italian who comes from Bergamo, and on Sunday he will be driving in his 65th Grand Prix. The best he has ever done, there he is to finish 5th once, 2 points. He started racing a long time ago. This season in the Ligier team, who have been beset with engine problems all the way through the year, the best he has been able to do is a 7th place in Belgium. Ligier intended to start this season with Alfa Romeo engines, something that they hoped was going to give them what every Grand Prix team hopes they will have, what is called an unfair advantage, something that the others haven't got. But the Alfa Romeo engine turned out to be inappropriate and unsuitable for Grand Prix racing, and they took the engine away when René Arnoux, the outspoken other driver in the French Ligier team, said in public, very forcefully indeed, what he thought of the engine. And I can tell you it wasn't very much. So Alfa Romeo said, well, if that's your attitude, you're not going to have the engines. And Guy Ligier, who is an irascible French ex-international rugby player and built like one, had to set about finding new engines. What he did was to go to the Arrows team, led by Jackie Oliver, and ask if he could buy or lease some of the ex-BMW Megatron engines that Arrows had an exclusive arrangement for this year. Arrows very happily said yes, because the money they got meant that they would be able to get in extra testing time. But Ligier has been operating very, very thinly on the engine front, and they've only got 7 engines here for the whole of this meeting. And you can see what's happening now as Senna, looking as impassive as ever, sits underneath the umbrella, looking at the television monitor, waiting to go out, as does Nelson Piquet. That's Frank Durney on the right with the white headphones. Frank Durney is not only Piquet's race engineer, but he is the man who is responsible for the aerodynamics of the Williams car and has designed and developed the active suspension system.
And Marino's car has also been brought back along with Gonzani's. Both of those cars were stopped in the same area of the track, and for that reason the red and black flag were shown so that they could be brought in. And of course the fact that both of the cars were stationary on the same part of the racetrack meant that the stewards felt that they better be cleared. They stopped the clock, and of course this is now being corrected.
Well, that's the scene on the track. What is the scene in the pits? Darrell Eastlake can tell us.
Well, Murray, I guess the hardest part for the people in the pits is that when a circuit like this is so closed up, they can't get out to check their cars. They're really being looked at the Channel 9 monitor. And Alan, it is difficult. I mean, they've got 2 cars stopped out on the circuit, and the only information they're getting are from our cameras.
Well, that's right, and it's difficult for the team too, because obviously they'd like to get the car back and see if they could get it going for one more shot at qualifying. But on a tight, twisty circuit like this, it's very important that you get the cars off the track, because it does represent a danger to the other qualifiers.
2 things you said to me are starting to happen. You said that the track is slippery and the choice of tyres had to be important. The other thing, the heat was going to affect the turbos, and that's fire.
Well, that's right. I think that it'll be very difficult to improve upon yesterday's times. That's why I stated yesterday that every day is equally as important as the next, because they would have to have gone for a good time yesterday, because today has turned out to be very hot, and, you know, quite frankly, I think they'll be very lucky to improve on yesterday's times because of the heat.
Well, as picked by our former world champion, Alan Jones, he summed up the situation spot on yesterday. So there you go. We're waiting on the cars to come back now, and we believe they're on the way down pit lane. So we might just take a walk out here and see what damage is done. Alan, you can have a look at the cars as they get towed in, and this pit here will really come alive now.
Yes, Darrell, there's obviously nothing structurally wrong with the car. It's obviously a mechanical failure. I would probably guess a turbo, because there's tremendous strains put on both the turbo and the engines in qualifying. They're really strained to the limit, and they're only asked to do 2 or 3 laps, but sometimes that's 2 or 3 laps too much.
The workload on the pit crews now with 2 cars in problems, I mean, it's hard enough keeping 1 going, but when you've got 2 out together, that's a big problem.
Yeah, well, I would have been doing engine changes after this qualifying session anyway. They would be putting fresh engines in for tomorrow's race, so this will probably get them started a bit earlier.
Well, there's no doubt about it. One of the most exciting parts of Australia right now is this pit lane at the Adelaide Raceway. Murray?
25 minutes out of 60 completed in this second qualifying session. A bit of a lull in practice. Join us again soon. Welcome back to Adelaide. 25 minutes of practice completed, and it is still in a hold situation. One of the cars has been brought back, that of Roberto Moreno. Gonzani's car is back now, and they're waiting in the pit lane, ready to restart practice as soon as they are given the all clear. I can see the green flag being readied, so that means to say that the track is clear. The start official looks at his watch. The engine revs rise. The green flag is shown. The track is clear. It is go for Rene Arnoux, followed by Satoru Nakajima. There is Arnoux coming towards us in the Ligier. Their tyres are being checked. Actually, Satoru Nakajima's car has had its engine stalled, and they've got to restart it. So that lets Capelli, there is Nakajima's picture. He's getting away now. Capelli is away next in the 3.5 metre march, followed by Eddie Cheever. There is Capelli in the distinctively coloured 3.5 metre car. There is Italian-American Eddie Cheever in the Arrows. Next through is the Lola. of Philippe Alliot, the Frenchman. Ayrton Senna is waiting to join the track, and it's at this stage where, hello, this is interesting because neither Nakajima's engine, Honda, nor Senna's engine, Honda, started.
It may be because of temperature. It quite often can be that they've turned the boost up to its maximum permissible 4 bars, and it may be that the engine doesn't like it. The plumbing, the cooling of each engine is different between the Honda engine in a Williams chassis to the Honda engine in a Lotus chassis. There is a considerable difference. The cars are now filing out. The officials are only letting them out with a gap of about 10 seconds. They're looking at the tyres and making sure the officials reckoning whether they've got qualifying tyres on or not. And the car next up, the blue, white and yellow car, is that of Nelson Piquet, world champion elect.
We've talked about tyres a lot. Now, the way they establish that the cars are in fact only using one of the 2 sets they're allowed to use is that each set of tyres has the car's race number stenciled on the side of it before practice begins, and the cars are stopped as they exit the pit lane by officials who take a quick look at the front and rear 4 tyres and make sure that in Piquet's case the number 6 is stenciled on the sidewall of each of those tyres. And now, in the 28th minute of this 60-minute practice session, still only 9 men have gone faster than they went yesterday. 35 minutes or so left then of this practice, with Berger still the fastest man ever at Adelaide because he shattered Nigel Mansell's pole position time of last year when he went out in the red Ferrari yesterday. You can see that he is 0.8 of a second faster than Piquet, and that is a tremendous margin of superiority. The Ferrari has not only got the power and the handling now, but even more important for tomorrow's race, which is going to be a very long one, it has a very fuel-efficient engine.
The Ferrari is going through sort of troubles with their drivers in the way of medication, etc. One of Berger's really close friends told me just before qualifying that Berger was complaining so badly about his breathing that he reckons he did his fastest lap yesterday in one big breath. Now, I can hardly believe that, but he said that when he crossed the finishing line, he immediately had to unbuckle his seatbelt because he wasn't breathing correctly. Now, I think this business about his illness is certainly something that he's playing up just a little bit. It's a psychological thing, and it may be to his advantage, I don't know. Jody Scheckter used to always complain about always being ill. He was a hypochondriac. Nigel Mansell's a man who complains constantly about his physical condition. He's always got something wrong with him, and it seems that Berger's falling to the same ailment. So here am I talking in one breath about the physical fitness of those racing drivers, their conditioning and their diet, and on the the other hand, they're complaining about constantly being ill.
What did you do wrong, Jackie, if you have to be highly strung to be a #1 driver?
Well, you have to be very highly strung in one hand, but you've got to control your emotions in that respect, and I think the man who does that best, Murray, at least in the racing tracks, not in the commentary positions naturally, is of course Alain Prost.
Nice one, Jackie. Right, well, we're looking at Michele Alboreto now, and spinning off there, spinning off, it's Arnoux. Who else? René Arnoux, but this time he's succeeded in going off without taking somebody with him. I should think that'll be a matter of great disappointment to him, because he normally harpoons someone on his way off the course. Alain Prost slows down because Arnoux has stalled his engine, and he's got to get someone to give him a shove to restart it.
Well, in fact, he's going to have to. It looks like he's stalled his engine in the worst possible place. It's at the end of the straight. So the marshals will undoubtedly remove him. Now, whether he'll get restarted or not, he's in a position of danger. The flag marshals can push him away without any fear of contradiction in race control, saying he's not going to get restarted. He's saying he doesn't want to go forward. The marshals are now bringing him back. Now, he will unquestionably try to start up his engine when they push him forward. He'll try to engage a gear and kick-start it. Now let's see what happens here, because the marshals could technically push him backwards across the racetrack and keep him out of danger. Now wait till you see if he kicks this one to start. They've given up. He's running.
Yes,
he's okay.
His foot slipped on the clutch jacket, didn't it?
Well, it's amazing how these accidents of good faith can happen.
So, René Arnoux on his way again, having been passed by one of the Arrows, which are going extremely well, actually. Cheever in 11th position on the grid, Derek Warwick in 12th place, and watch the Benetton of Farby just behind Arnoux.
Incidentally, Derek Warwick had an engine change between practice and qualifying. They had an engine go wrong with them, so he's got a fresh engine, Derek Warwick has, for qualifying, as Theo Fabi brings his Benetton with the united colours of Benetton all over this car. It must be, really, it's the coat of many colours, because my goodness, is a piebald pony.
And it is still just 9 men who have gone faster today than they went yesterday. The fastest of whom, as off goes Alio in the 3.5 litre Lola, the fastest of whom is Patrese in 6th place. And look where Alio's done it. Right on the hairpin, right on Foster's hairpin, which leads into the start and finish straight. He's getting a shove to get him going as Senna passes by. Senna has got Dana in front of him, and behind him he has got Alessandro Nannini in the Minardi car. But now Ayrton Senna really needs to get a tramp on. It's 1:22.2 is his time today, compared with 1:18.5 yesterday. He is in 4th position on the grid. He would like to move up into the front row, but he's not going to do it because he slows down. Nannini passes him. And it's Berger fastest, Piquet second. That's the front row. Prost 3rd fastest and Senna 4th fastest, 2nd row. The 3rd row is Alboreto and Patrese. Then Boutsen and Farby, followed by Johansson and De Cesaris.
So Alain Prost guides his way around Adelaide as we're live here on Channel 9's Wide World of Sports, and we'll be back for more coverage of qualifying, the final hour.
Adelaide, as world champion Alain Prost reaches the end of a quick lap. His target is 1:18.2. I have my stopwatch running on him. He is not going to go faster than he has done before, but he's building up to speed. And I can tell you that there's lots of action, because that is Stefano Medina going off. The Italian in his first Grand Prix drive, who only did a few laps this morning in the 1.5-hour session, but he recovered brilliantly.
And darn lucky he was not to get that rear aerofoil wiped out there, because he just missed that rubber tyre wall there of those tyres, or he could have been into serious trouble with regards to a disarrangement of the rear artistic aerofoil, because that was something that could have caused him a lot of trouble. Might not have allowed him back to the pits either. So Medina was very fortunate. I think there's too much spinning going on, Murray. I don't like drivers making this many mistakes so obviously.
Well, Medina was one of them. Look at it again. See him right up over the curb. Now look and see how close that rear wing gets to the tyre wall that Jackie was talking about. But that is an indication of how incredibly good these race drivers' reflexes are, because he instantly sized up where he was in relation to the track, snicked it into first gear, drove out. He's back in the pit lane now, having his car checked over for safety. He needs all the racing mileage that he can get, because this Adelaide meeting is the first time that ex-world champion in the kart 125cc class Stefano Medina has ever driven in. And he is an excellent 15th position on the grid as a result of his time yesterday, and that's Patrese. Patrese off. Now it looks to me, I was about to say, it looks to me as though he's going to stay there, but he gets traction. That's the way he went off.
And he was dead lucky not to hit that wall. He went along parallel to that wall, amazingly close to it. This is how lucky you can be. You can count on that for luck. That wasn't good judgment on that one.
Well, Jackie, what's your theory that so many people are going off?
I think they're taking liberties. I don't understand why they're taking such liberties. The racetrack is definitely slick, there's no doubt about it. They've all been holidaying up on the barrier reef. Look at this replay again. Look how close he comes to that wall. He really gets himself within inches of that wall round there. He was over on the barrier reef. Maybe he's had too much of the sun up there. He was in Hamilton Island. We were all there together one night for dinner. He was so relaxed, he fell asleep at one point. So maybe some of those drivers, the last race of the season, maybe they've unplugged a little bit, because I cannot associate so many cars going off the road with people being really clued in mentally to it. There's too many mistakes.
Well, here's one who hasn't made any so far, Ayrton Senna. The cool, calm, very deliberate 27-year-old Brazilian who has 2 Grand Prix victories this season behind him, passing or attempting to pass Christian Danner's Zach speed as the German comes up to take the line on the corner. And behind Ayrton Senna is one of the 3.5-litre Tyrrells. And Senna is obviously taking things easy at the moment, building up to race speed.
You know, speaking about this excursion business of spinning off the tracks, we never see this at the beginning of a season, Murray. We never see it in the middle of the season. We go to racetracks that are green, sometimes very slippery, and we simply don't see drivers making this number of errors. It surely must be an end-of-season malady.
Yes, I guess you're right. In association, in their defence, with a surface that they say is very slippery, but they are obviously taking chances. Michele Alboreto, number 27, in spite of his hay fever, going well, 5th position on the grid. With yesterday's time, the top 5 men on that grid that you see there have gone slower today than they went yesterday. 6th on the grid, Riccardo Patrese, that you have just seen spin off in the Williams, is faster today than he was yesterday, but that would be as a result of the experience he had in Friday's practice and this morning, getting in particular to know the Williams gearbox better, which he was commenting yesterday was not as good in his opinion as the Brabham gearbox to which he is used. Michele Alboreto, Ferrari. Very often at the end of practice you will hear drivers say, I couldn't go any quicker, it wasn't me, it wasn't the car, it was the traffic. And you can see what I mean when I tell you that Michele Alboreto is catching now one of the much slower around this circuit 3.5-litre Lolas, and if that man doesn't move over and give him room, Alboreto is going to be slowed down. That's Bernie Ecclestone, the top man of FOCA, the Formula One Constructors Association, and the man who is actually responsible for the Australian Grand Prix coming here to Adelaide, so we've got a lot to thank him for. He's also the top man of Brabham, and he is sitting with Herbie Blash, his #1 man standing beside him. On the Brabham pit counter, you can see the 2 monitors in front of him, showing him the times of his cars and everybody else's. And now Alboreto, now we'll see whether, yes, the Lola's giving room. It's Dalmas. Dalmas has moved over, watching his mirrors, has let Alboreto through, so the Italian will not have lost any time there. You can see what his time is so far. What he's trying to do is beat his own time from yesterday, 1 minute 18.578. But it doesn't know he's not going to do it because he's still got to come out of Foster's hairpin. He's a long way off.
Wow, while he sets himself up for yet another lap here in Adelaide, this is Murray Walker and Jackie Stewart. We'll be right back live for more practice and qualifying in just a moment.
Just about the time you think it's all right.
Well, back at the Adelaide racetrack, here is the pocket genius Alain Prost, the world champion of 1986 and 1985. But try as he may, he has not thus far succeeded in improving on his time of yesterday. 10 men have, and some of them have spun off in the process. There, for instance, is Philly Vallio losing the Lola, scrubbing speed off, and covering himself with dust.
Rear brakes came on before the front brakes. We could see in the replay there, the rear brakes stopped before the front brakes took action. So there we'll see another replay of this perhaps and try and analyze this spin as it comes in. Look at the brakes, look at the rear brakes. The rear brakes are catching. He's on the loose stuff with the rear brakes. So the brake balance needs adjustment. He can usually do that from the cockpit of the car, but very few racing drivers can accurately do that, as somebody else has gone off at the top end of the pit straight as Berger sits waiting to go out, and René Arnoux has spun off at the top at the beginning of the front straight as a cool set of eyes, even though he thinks he's got a temperature and he's got a fever. Gerhard Berger will forget all of those things when the adrenaline starts to pump. I can assure you that's what happens as a racing driver.